Good morning. Today we are looking at lesson 6.4, which is solving compound inequalities. Compound meaning there's more than one inequality. Just like a compound sentence combines two sentences, a compound inequality combines two inequalities. So first set of inequalities we're going to look at is what is called an AND statement, because our arrows are going to end up pointing the same direction or both towards the middle. Later we'll get to what's called an OR statement, which our arrows are going to be pointing apart one side or the other side. So let's take a look up here. We're going to graph just this first one. If I graph this at -5, say here's -5, this, remember, there's no equal to, so these are open circles. If it has the equal to, then it's a closed circle. There's a little review. So this is an open circle, pointing greater than, because it does not make an L for less than, to the right. Put a line in there, make an arrow pointing to the right, which would be towards -4 or -3, towards 0. Then our second inequality, if we graph 0 on here, this one has the equal to, so it would be a closed circle. And then like an L, less than is to the left. Just like that. So instead of graphing on two separate graphs, one here and one here, now they have them all written together as one big inequality. So we need to split this up. What they did is they took them and they put them together. This is one inequality with an X, and this is the other one with the X. So the one written in red was good. We have X is less than or equal to 0. But the one in blue, if I just write that -5 is less than X, we have the letter on the wrong side. So we have to flip this back around just like they did up here. They have it written with the arrow pointing the other direction. We flip that around, we get X and then -5. So these two inequalities are what we'll really just have to graph, this one and this one, on the same number line. So we need to decide which number is smaller. Well, the negative numbers are smaller, so I'm going to put -5 over here, and then 0 over here. If you want to number the lines in between, you can, but you don't have to. And then at -5, I have an open circle, and then pointing to the right, greater than is to the right. And then at 0, I have a closed circle, pointing to the left. So our arrows meet in the middle. So our answers are between here and here. That's why it's called an AND statement, because our answers are where the arrows are pointing. It's between the two arrows. Let's take a look at the next one. This one, if we put 23 on here, would be an open circle pointing to the right. Greater than 23 would be towards 24 to the right. And then down here, also an open circle at 19, but this one's pointing to the left. Well, instead of graphing them on separate number lines, we're just going to graph them on the same number line. And this one, with an OR statement, it will always already have the word OR right there. So we need to graph 19 and 23. At 19, open circle, pointing like an L to the left. Less than 19 would be towards 18. And then greater than 23, open circle, and greater than would be towards 24 or to the right. So our arrows are pointing apart from each other. That's what we call an OR statement. Our answers are less than 19, or they're greater than 23. So notice that our arrows were always pointing together or apart. They will never be pointing with an arrow in the same direction. You will never have that. Okay? They will never be pointing both to the left, nope, or both to the right. They'll always be pointing either both apart or both together. Okay? So let's take a look. This one's already graphed for us. Now, I'm going to go back for a second. The letter X represented where our answers were. Our answers were between here and here. Our answers were less than 19 and greater than 23. So here I'm going to use X to represent my answers. And my answers are between 2 and 3. This is a filled-in circle at +3 and an open circle at -2. So I'm going to say my answers are what at -2? Well, my arrow would be really, if you can tell, it's bolded to the right. This one's bolded to the left, meaning my arrows are really pointing together. So here, x is my answers. My answers are less than or greater than -2. Well, they're to the right, and my arrow here is pointing to the right, greater than -2. So here's one side, that's one answer there. And over here, filled in circle at 3, my answers are also, x is still my answers, like an L less than 3, towards 2 or 1. And here is an L for less than symbol pointing to the left. But it could be exactly at 3, so I'm going to do equal to 3. So this is my set of answers right here. Because this is an AND statement, this and this, my answers are between this and this, you could write it together. So I could put x is less than or equal to 3 right here. But this one, if I flip this around to put the x in the middle, I can overlap the x's, flip my symbol, and put the -2 there. So that's how they wrote it together. They just flipped one of them around so that they could put the x in the same spot. I would accept separate or together. Either one would work fine. So let's take a look at the next one. This one I know is going to be an OR statement because I have my answers on one side or the other side. So here, x is my answers. My answers are what at 0? Well, they are -1, -2, -3. They are less than 0, so like an L less than 0. My answers are also x is what at 2? Well, this is a filled in circle. So 3, 4, 5, these are greater than, so my arrow, just like the symbol here, greater than or equal to 2. So there's my answers. This or this. And if you have trouble with those two, let me know. There are a couple like that on your homework. Alright, it says sketch a graph of the inequality. So here, this one's already written as two separate inequalities. We have to graph this and this on the same graph. So all we have to do is put an 8 on here. I know 8 is less than 15, and I'm going to put 15 over here. Don't worry about counting 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Doesn't matter. I just know 8 is less than 15. I just put them on the number line. At 8, we have an open circle, like an L pointing to the left. And then at 15, also an open circle, but pointing to the right. So this is my answer. My answers are less than 8 or greater than 15. This next one, though, it's written as one big inequality. And if that's the case, you know it's going to be an AND statement. They're going to be pointing together. This side of our inequality looks good to graph. I could graph x is less than 2. But the x also goes with the -4. If I write that out, -4 is less than x. Well, I can't graph that, so I need to flip this around so I can graph it. So I have x, flip the symbol, and -4. Now I can graph this and this on the same graph. Should have moved these up a little bit. So I'm going to put a -4 over here, because if 0 was in the middle, -4 would be to the left, and +2 would be to the right. You do not have to number all the lines, just a frame of reference for where things are at. So this would be an open circle, and then greater than, or an arrow pointing to the right. Greater than -4 would be towards 0 or the positives. At 2, also an open circle, but like an L, less than is to the left. So this is my answer here, between -4 and 2. You don't need to write the words, but if it helps you, go ahead and do so. Alright, here's the next one. It says solve the inequality in graph. I didn't give you a graph on these ones. You'll have to graph and draw your own number line down here by yourself. So in order to write two inequalities, we need to get x all by itself in the middle of our two symbols here. So here's our two inequality symbols. I need to get x all by itself in the middle. Just like we solve a regular equation and draw a line down, we're just going to draw two lines down. And whatever I do to the middle, I'm going to have to do to both sides. So the opposite of adding 3 would be subtracting 3. That'll get rid of that +3. I also need to subtract 3 here and here. Whatever you do to the middle, you have to do to both sides. So 3 minus 3 goes away and leaves us with just x. Negative 4 minus 3, same sign, add and keep, that's a negative 7. And then 11, take away 3, 11, 10, 9, 8, right there. So we're going to split this up so we can graph it. The x is by itself, so the x goes here with the 8, x is less than 8. And over here as well, negative 7 is less than x. I can't graph that, so I need to flip-flop this around. X, flip my symbol, and negative 7. So I drew myself a number line. I'm going to put the least number on the left. Negative 7 is less, so negative 7. 8 I know is bigger on the right. If you want to put a 0 in the middle, you can. You don't have to. Just so we know where things are at. And then this is an open circle at negative 7. Greater than, it does not make an L. Greater than would be to the right. Or that, put the line in there to make that arrow. Or like an L, less than 8, open circle here. Less than 8 would be towards 7, 6, 5 to the left. So there's my inequality all done. This next one looks like one big inequality, but you see the word or in there, meaning we have two separate inequalities to solve. We have this one to solve, and we have this one to solve. I'm just going to take a look at this one first on the left here. Take a look at them one at a time. So get x by itself, I need to get rid of this plus 3, so I'm going to subtract 3. So I have 2x is less than, well, 9 minus 3 is 6. And then divide by 2. I get x is less than 6 divided by 2, which is 3. Now I just need to look at the other side and solve this one as well. Again, we want x by itself, so the opposite of subtracting 6 would be adding 6. So I have 3x is greater than, and then 12 plus 6 more, well, 6 plus 2 is 8. So 18. And then divide by 3 on both sides. We get x is greater than, well, 3 goes into 18 6 times, because 3 times 6 is 18. So I'm going to draw myself a number line. I know 3 is less than 6, so I'm going to put 3 over here. 0 would be over here this time. And these are both open circles. And at 3, like an L, less than 3 would be towards 2 or to the left. And greater than 6 to the right. And you know that your arrow should point apart, which they do, so you know you did it right. Alright, we've got just a couple more questions. Just like before, if we have two symbols, we need to draw 2 lines down because we want to get y all by itself. So in order to get y all by itself, ignore these numbers on the outsides. Get rid of your addition and subtraction first. I'm going to subtract 4 on all 3 sides. 4 minus 4 goes away, so I have a negative 2y in the middle. 10 minus 4 is 6. 24 minus 4 is 20. And then I just need to get the y all by itself. So the opposite of multiplying by negative 2 is divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2. Be careful now. What happens when you multiply or divide by a negative number? You have to flip your inequality, remember? Flip your symbols the other direction because you divided by a negative. So 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3. 20 divided by negative 2 is negative 10. So I have this inequality to graph, and I have this inequality to graph. Let's write them separate. Y is greater than or equal to negative 10. This one on this side, negative 3 is greater than or equal to y. I got to flip this around so I can graph it. Y, flip my symbol, negative 3. So let's draw ourselves a short number line. And now these are both negatives. So think, if they're both negatives, they're both going to be on this side of 0. So if I'm counting -1, -2, -3 would come first, and then way over here somewhere would be -10. So biggest negative number is the least. So you need to graph this one over here. So this one's a closed circle. And then greater than would be pointing to the right. At -3 here, we're going to graph this one over here. Also a closed circle, but like an L, less than would be to the left. So they're pointing together, an AND statement. Our answers are between -10 and -3. Alright, next, there's an OR, so I know right away my answers, my arrows are going to be pointing apart, one side or the other side. But let's solve both. I'm going to solve just this one first. Get rid of that +1. I'm going to subtract 1. We have 3h is less than a -5 minus 1, all negative, same sign, add and keep. That's a -6. And then the opposite of multiplying by 3 is divide by 3. So we have h is less than, well, -6 divided by 3 is -2. 3 goes into 6 2 times. Over here as well, draw our line down. We need to get h by itself, so the opposite of subtracting 5 would be adding 5. So I have 2h is greater than 7 plus 5 more, well 5 plus 5 is 10, and then 2 more would give me 12. And then divide by 2. Get rid of that multiplying by 2 there. So we have h is greater than 12 divided by 2, which is 6. So I'm going to graph this on my number line. Which one's the least on the left? I know -2 is a smaller number. 6 is greater. So these both happen to be open circles. There's no line underneath there for the equal to. So at -2, like an L to the left. And then the other direction would be greater than to the right. Alright, one slide left. If you're hanging with me here, you're doing an awesome job. We just have 2 more questions left. We need to go through these 2 because the second one is a little bit unique. So let's solve this first one. We see the OR there, so I know my arrows are going to be pointing apart from each other. So I'm going to get R by itself. The opposite of adding 3 would be subtracting 3. We have 2R is less than 7 minus 3 is 4. And then divide by 2 on both sides. We get R is less than 4 divided by 2, which is 2. And then on the other side as well, get rid of this +9, we need to subtract 9. So those eliminate. I have a -R is less than or equal to 2 minus 9. Well, I know there's more negatives. Different signs, we're just subtracting. 9 minus 2 is 7. But be careful, I can't graph this like this because that's really a -1. So the opposite of multiplying by -1 is dividing by -1. So whenever you multiply or divide by a negative, your sign flips. Be careful. We have R. Let me move this down. Oops, that's all stuck together. We have R is now greater than or equal to a positive 7. We flipped our symbol the other direction. If you forgot to do that, you would have seen your arrows both pointing to the left, which means you made a mistake. Now they're both pointing apart from each other. So here's 2. 7 would be greater on the right. At 2, we have an open circle, like an L, pointing to the left. And at 7, a closed circle this time, different circles, pointing to the right. Like I said again, if you forgot to flip, this one would have been pointing this way, which you know would have been a mistake because you can't have arrows pointing the same direction. So, last question. This one we have 2 signs. Again, we're going to draw 2 lines. And I see parentheses, which means I need to distribute or draw a box in here. So I have 2 and then W plus 8. Well, I know 2 times w is just 2w, put them together. 2 times 8, we're multiplying. 8 times 2 is 16. So I'm going to write 2w plus 16. And then I have a negative 14 over here and a 6 over here. And my goal is to get w all by itself. So let's get rid of this addition and subtraction. I'm going to subtract 16. Now we just have a 2w in the middle. A negative 14 minus 16 are all negative, same sign, add and keep. So 6 plus 4 is 10. So 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3, negative 30. And then 6 take away 16, again, different sign, subtract. 16 minus 6 is 10, but there's more negatives. So last, the opposite of multiply by 2 is just divide by 2. We did not divide by a negative, so don't flip your symbols. Negative 30 divided by 2 is negative 15. And negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. So we have one inequality here that we can graph, and one here that we can graph. So this one with w is less than negative 5, that one's good to go. But this one with negative 15 is less than or equal to w, we got to flip around. So w, flip my sign, and negative 15. So on my number line, I know these are both negative numbers, so if 0 is here, negatives are all to the left side. I would count negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, all the way. I'd first hit negative 5, and then as I keep counting, I would finally get to negative 15 over on the left side. So at negative 15, there's an equal to, so closed circle, pointing greater than, which is to the right. And then over here, open circle, like an L, less than is pointing to the left. Alright, this is your lesson on compound inequalities and should be a good review of graphing open and closed circles. Your homework is the worksheet. If you have any questions, please let me know. The first 4, you need to write an inequality for each dot, meaning say x is less than or greater than 4, x is greater than or equal to or less than or equal to 8. Okay, so you got to figure out what symbol goes between there. Okay, so you can see that's a closed circle, so I know there's a line underneath, and your arrow will be pointed to the right. Here's a closed circle pointing to the left. Figure out what symbol goes here. I'm going to give you one hint, this first one. We are greater than 4 towards 5, 6, so we are greater than, your arrow is also pointing that direction. So that's your first one. You've got to figure out the symbol for the second one.